Hi, my name is Hope with the PerformLaw Team, and this is a walkthrough of the form that we will send to an attorney that a law firm is considering. And then I will also walk through the analysis that we create out of the data we receive from this questionnaire. Of course, we gather some contact information, some background information, just some things to stay organized, some housekeeping. We set some sort of ground rules just to make sure we're all on the same page. Where are they going to work? What are the office space requirements? This is leave no stone unturned kind of questions, because you don't want to sign off on an agreement and then, oh, you're only going to be working from home. That's not what we agreed to. That kind of thing. We want to make sure we cover all the bases. Then we start to ask them about their job title, their current job title, and their originations. We ask about their productivity, so whether that's in the form of billable hours, flat fees, contingency fees. We just get their productivity stats. We get their rates. If they have any other staff members working on their originations, we also get those rates. And then we ask about their realization, what percent of your work gets billed, what percent of your billings get collected. We ask them information about their existing compensation formula, as well as what kind of compensation they're interested in. If they have a draw, what kind of draw, benefits information, clients information, whether they're working with a recruiter, just because that's an additional expense, any additional liabilities, and then if they're going to bring a team with them, we want information about the team. A lot of that information is the same depending on how high up that timekeeper is, and we also ask about secretaries, or will they need any secretaries at the new firm. Then we ask about any budgets that they might need, like a marketing budget, any kind of networking, and then just a space for any extra comments. So all of this data comes together into this form here. This is the result of the analysis that we work up. We will put together as much data as we can based on what they've given us. In a lot of cases, if they're able to give us multiple years worth of data, we'll often create some kind of an average so that you have a really stable assumption being used instead of something that's based off of just 1 year, for example. So I usually like to show this from bottom to top because the assumptions go at the bottom. So we put any productivity information that they gave us in here in order to get to a collected fees amount. So that's going to be their own personal worked collections, whether they originated them or not. We deal with originations over here to the right. If they have originations, those go here. And then depending on how much work they're personally able to perform, we make an estimate for what percentage of their originations they will work. And if there's anything left over, we assume that it's going to go to attorneys and paralegals at your firm. And naturally, out of those percentages, we will also estimate collections that come out of that based on your firm's attorney and paralegal rates. Therefore, come to the originated and worked dollars. So in this case, that's $240,000. That's personally worked by this attorney out of his own originations or her own originations. The rest goes to other people at your firm. We estimate a profit margin. Usually we use 40% unless we have more information about your firm and what kind of profit margin your firm normally sees. We have a recap down here for hours worked and needed. In this case, we're assuming this attorney is going to be able to provide 1,600 hours of work. So in this person's case, that translates to 1,111 hours on their own originations, and then the rest would need to come from firm files, and then whatever remainder from his own originations or her own originations can be worked by the firm's attorneys and paralegals would go here. There's also this recap of the billing rates being used in order to make this report work. We have a working attorney profit calculation, so timekeeper profit calculation. This is not a profit calculation on their originations. This is just on their own personal work, whether they've worked their originations or worked files from your firm. So these are the collections that we calculated down below. We subtract out compensation and benefit costs. And this is not total compensation. This is working attorney compensation. I'll talk about that in a moment. we subtract out any secretarial overhead and general overhead. We usually use the general overhead allocation for your firm, whatever that may be. If we don't have that number, we will either ask for an estimate or create an estimate. We will also take into account any costs that may be specific to this attorney. We have a working attorney timekeeper bonus calculation over here. What we typically do is take the timekeeper profitability, subtract out a threshold for the firm to keep in order to protect you and allow you to have first dibs at the profit. Whatever's left over, there's a bonus of 20% out of that. So in this case, it's $4,000. After the bonus, we again calculate profit. So it's just a $4,000 difference. And we also have an estimate for profit on work given to others. So that's profit on the originations. In this case, this person originated $300,000. He or she worked most of it, and what was given away was $60,000 in collections. We're estimating that $15,000 of that will be profit. At the top here, we have a compensation model. So I mentioned the working attorney compensation earlier. This first column A is for compensation on worked fees that were not originated by this attorney and that the firm provided. So he or she would receive 30% of those fees, and that's the blue box here. 31,000 goes toward the compensation. Then there's worked and originated fees. 45% comes to 108,000. This is the optional timekeeper profit bonus, which came to 4,000 toward compensation. This is 15% of any originated files that this attorney does not personally work on. What we mean by that is those are the originations that this attorney gave to some other paralegal or associate to work, and those collections, they would receive a 15% cut of those collections on their originations. That comes to $9,000. We do have a functionality here, which we did not use, but it's for fees managed. So if you have a situation where you think this attorney is going to come to your firm and supervise some associates, you could consider compensating them some percentage of the fees that they supervise or manage. So that's fees that they are not necessarily directly working on, but the associates that they supervise are working on those fees. And you might choose to give them 2% or 3%, somewhere around there, of those fees. But that's a unique situation, and we don't see it a whole lot, but this is a good way to handle it when you do and if you choose to compensate for that. This blue box here is the summation of all 5 of these columns. And just a note, you don't have to opt to actually compensate them from straight formula. You can just use this formula as a guide to get to a number that would be competitive and will also give you a way to see what would be comfortable for your firm. So in this case, this compensation that we calculate is useful because it gets used in the profit calculation. Working attorney compensation comes from these 2 columns A and B, and the remainder comes from columns C and D, and that goes into the total comp. But as far as just the working attorney profit, we use the working attorney compensation as a cost. It's also getting used here in order to get us that net profit number. In this case, this is a pretty comfortable amount of profit. You would be safe compensating this amount. Naturally, this is an example, so we would need to see the stats coming from the attorney that you're considering in order to build this out for your specific situation. I hope this video was useful. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and have a great rest of your day.